I never thought a man with no home could teach me so much. But when he stepped into that church service and walked up to the altar, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. It was a typical Sunday morning in the little church I'd been attending for years. The wooden pews creaked under the weight of regulars who'd long ago gotten used to the hymns and the rhythm of the service. Nothing ever really changed here, and I think that was part of the comfort. It was a steady, predictable place. The service began with the usual songs, and the small congregation settled into their seats, flipping through the hymnals or exchanging quiet greetings. I'd always felt a deep sense of peace inside these walls, but that Sunday, everything changed. The door to the church opened with a squeak, and we all looked up. Most of us had learned to ignore the occasional latecomer, but something was different about this entrance. Standing in the doorway was a man I didn't recognize, a man who didn't belong in a place like this. He was homeless, dressed in ragged clothes, a thick, scruffy beard hanging down his chin. His shoes were falling apart, and his eyes were tired but intense, like someone who had seen too much and now wanted to disappear. But he didn't turn around or leave. Instead, he walked inside with a certain quiet purpose, as if he was meant to be there. The room went silent, save for the rustle of papers and the occasional cough. I saw heads turning, a few uncomfortable glances exchanged. Some people shifted in their seats, unsure of how to respond. A few of the older members of the congregation looked at him with wary eyes, but the homeless man didn't seem to notice. He just walked down the aisle, his worn feet softly padding across the wood floor. He made his way slowly up to the altar. No one stopped him. There was something about his presence that kept everyone still, almost frozen. He wasn't begging, and he didn't appear desperate. He didn't even look at the other people. Instead, his eyes stayed forward, focused, determined. It was as if he had come for a reason and was prepared to face whatever he had to. He reached the altar, stood there for a few moments, and then he just stayed. No words, no explanation, just stillness. It was uncomfortable, to be honest. We weren't used to seeing people like this in our church. I think we all assumed people who came to church on Sundays were like us, decent, put together, looking for spiritual guidance. The man's presence was unsettling. And yet, there was something about him that kept my attention. I couldn't look away. The pastor seemed to hesitate. A murmur spread across the congregation as people exchanged glances, wondering if this was a planned part of the service or an unfortunate disruption. The homeless man continued standing there, looking out at us with an expression I couldn't quite read. It was almost like he was waiting for something. Then, as if he had decided to take control of the moment, he dropped to his knees at the altar, bowing his head as though in silent prayer. This act broke the tension, and all eyes were on him now. His presence filled the room. I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my chest. The room held its breath. The choir had stopped singing, the rustling of the hymnals ceased, and everyone seemed to be watching this man on his knees at the altar. The silence felt heavy, almost unbearable. I looked around and saw a few uncomfortable faces, people shifting in their seats, unsure of how to do. Was he asking for money, for food? Was he here to cause trouble? But then something changed. The homeless man, still kneeling, raised his head slowly. His eyes met the eyes of the congregation. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't even speaking. He was just there, in the most vulnerable position, like he was offering something intangible. His presence demanded attention, not with words, but with the weight of the act itself. And then, without warning, he spoke. "I don't need your pity," he said, his voice rough but clear. "I need your love." The room went completely still. His words hung in the air like an unexpected punch. He wasn't asking for help, but he was calling us out, demanding that we look deeper, past his appearance, past the fact that he was homeless, and see him as something more. "I've been living on the streets," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "But it's not the cold that breaks you. It's the feeling of being invisible, of being forgotten." He paused for a moment, and I could see the emotion in his face. It wasn't anger or bitterness. It was a deep sadness, a grief I couldn't comprehend. He was sharing something raw, something personal. He continued, his voice softening. "I've been begging. I've been lost. But I've never felt this alone until I walked into a place like this. All I want is to feel like I belong somewhere." There was a shift in the room. It wasn't just pity anymore. It was understanding. He wasn't just asking for help, but he was telling us something we needed to hear. His vulnerability laid bare something we often try to ignore, the simple truth that everyone deserves to be seen. And then, without warning, he turned around and walked away from the altar. He wasn't asking for money or even acknowledgement. His words hung in the air as he left. But the impact of his message lingered. It felt like we had all been shaken out of our routine, forced to confront something we'd been ignoring for too long. The service continued, but it wasn't the same. It couldn't be. People sat quietly, processing what had just happened. The air felt thicker, more charged, as if something deep had shifted in the church that day. The pastor finally stood up, his voice thick with emotion. "That man, that stranger, just shared something with us that we can't ignore. He reminded us of something very important. We are all in this together. We are not here to look down on others, but to lift each other up." As the service ended, people slowly filed out of the pews, their heads low in thought. I overheard conversations among the congregation, people discussing what had happened. But there were no harsh judgments, no whispers of scorn. Instead, people were reflecting. Some were even speaking about ways to help those who felt invisible. That homeless man may have left with no more than he came for, but he gave us something far more valuable than any donation. He gave us a lesson in humanity. His secret wasn't just about survival. It was about connection and how important it is to see each other. What would you have done if you were in that church? Could you have made a difference in that moment? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe, because kindness is something we should never forget.